Today, we're tackling what might be the hardest question in Christianity, and honestly, in all of religion and philosophy. Why does God allow suffering? Why do bad things happen to good people? If God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-loving, why is there so much pain in the world? This question has a name in philosophy and theology. It's called the problem of evil, or theodicy. And I'm not going to sugarcoat this. There's no easy answer that's going to satisfy everyone. But what I want to do today is walk you through the major Christian responses to this question. Share some perspectives that have helped millions of people find meaning in suffering, and be honest about where the answers fall short. Because here's the truth. If you're struggling with this question right now, if you've experienced loss or pain and you're wondering where God is, you're not alone. Some of the greatest minds in Christian history have wrestled with this exact same question, and some of them never found an answer that completely satisfied them. But they found ways to live with the mystery, and maybe their insights can help you, too. Let's start by being clear about what we're really asking. The problem of suffering exists because of three statements that seem to contradict each other. First, God is all-powerful, which means he can do anything. Second, God is all good, which means he wants what's best for us and doesn't want us to suffer. Third, suffering exists. Evil exists. Pain exists. If God is all-powerful, he could stop suffering. If God is all good, he would want to stop suffering. So why doesn't he? That's the question that has challenged believers for thousands of years and driven some people away from faith entirely. Let's look at the most common Christian responses to this problem, starting with what's probably the most popular one: free will. The free will argument goes like this. God could have created a world where humans were like robots, programmed to only do good and never cause harm. But that wouldn't be love. Real love requires choice. For humans to genuinely love God and love each other, we need the freedom to choose. And with that freedom comes the possibility of choosing wrongly. We can choose to hurt others. We can choose selfishness over compassion. We can choose hatred over love. According to this view, much of the suffering in the world is a direct result of human choices. Wars, murder, abuse, theft, betrayal. These don't happen because God wants them. They happen because God gave us freedom, and we misuse it. The Holocaust didn't happen because God caused it. It happened because humans chose evil. Poverty in a world of abundance doesn't exist because God wants children to starve. It exists because of human greed, corruption, and indifference. This answer works for a lot of suffering. It explains moral evil, the evil that comes from human choices. But here's where it breaks down. What about natural evil? What about earthquakes that kill thousands? What about cancer in children? What about genetic diseases, tsunamis, pandemics? A 5-year-old dying of leukemia isn't a result of anyone's free will choice. So how does free will explain that kind of suffering? This is where Christians offer different responses. Some say that natural evil entered the world through the fall, through Adam and Eve's sin. When humans chose to disobey God, it corrupted not just humanity, but all of creation. Romans chapter 8 talks about creation groaning and suffering, waiting for redemption. In this view, natural disasters and diseases are part of a broken world, consequences of that original rupture in the relationship between God and creation. But let's be honest. This raises more questions. Why would God design a system where one person's choice has consequences for billions of people who had nothing to do with it? Why would innocent children suffer for something Adam and Eve allegedly did thousands of years ago? It doesn't seem fair, and many people struggle with this explanation. Another major Christian response is what theologians call soul-making or character development. This idea, developed by thinkers like Irenaeus and later John Hick, suggests that suffering serves a purpose in developing human character and spiritual growth. Think about it this way. Every virtue we admire requires some kind of adversity to develop. Courage can't exist without danger. Compassion can't develop without encountering suffering. Patience requires frustration. Perseverance needs obstacles. In a world without any suffering or challenges, we would never develop these qualities. We'd be eternal children, never growing, never maturing, never becoming the people we're capable of becoming. This view suggests that God allows suffering because He's more interested in our spiritual development than our comfort. James chapter 1 says, "Consider it pure joy when you face trials, because the testing of your faith produces perseverance, and perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete." There's truth to this. Many people will tell you that their hardest experiences, while painful, taught them the most and shaped them into better people. Cancer survivors often talk about how the experience gave them perspective and gratitude they never had before. People who've overcome addiction often say that hitting rock bottom was necessary for their transformation. But again, this explanation has limits. What about suffering that doesn't lead to growth? What about a baby who dies at 3 months old? What character development happened there? What about people who are broken by suffering, who lose their faith, who become bitter? Not all suffering leads to positive growth. Sometimes suffering just destroys people. Let me share another perspective that comes from the book of Job, one of the oldest books in the Bible. Job was a righteous man who lost everything: his wealth, his children, his health. His friends insisted he must have sinned to deserve this punishment. But the book makes it clear. Job didn't do anything wrong. He was suffering, and there was no neat explanation. When God finally speaks to Job at the end of the book, He doesn't give Job answers. Instead, God essentially says, "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Do you understand how the universe works? Can you comprehend my ways?" It's not a satisfying answer in the way we want, but it's an honest one. Some suffering is beyond our understanding. We don't have God's perspective. We see a tiny slice of reality, a brief moment in time. God sees the whole picture in ways we can't comprehend. This is sometimes called the mystery response, or the limitation of human understanding. It acknowledges that we might never fully understand why God allows certain things to happen. And for some people, that's actually comforting. It means they can stop trying to figure out what they did wrong, or what the suffering means, and simply trust that God has purposes beyond their understanding. But for others, this feels like a cop-out. It can sound like God works in mysterious ways, which doesn't help when you're actually suffering. And it can be used to shut down legitimate questions and pain. Let me also address something that's often said but is actually terrible theology. God needed another angel. Or, God doesn't give you more than you can handle. These are not in the Bible, and they're not helpful. God doesn't cause tragedies because He needs angels. And people are definitely given more than they can handle all the time. That's part of the problem of suffering we're discussing. So where does all this leave us? I've given you multiple Christian perspectives, and you might notice that none of them completely solve the problem. And that's because, honestly, there might not be a complete intellectual solution that makes the existence of suffering perfectly compatible with an all-powerful, all-loving God. But here's what I've observed. For many Christians, the question shifts over time. It moves from why does God allow suffering to where is God in my suffering, and how do I respond to suffering? These are different questions with different kinds of answers. Christians who find peace in the midst of suffering often aren't the ones who figured out the philosophical problem. They're the ones who've experienced what they believe is God's presence in their darkest moments. They're the ones who've found meaning in serving others who suffer. They're the ones who've seen redemption come from their pain, not in a way that justifies the pain, but in a way that shows beauty can emerge from ashes. I think of people like Corrie ten Boom, who survived Nazi concentration camps and spent the rest of her life preaching forgiveness. Or Joni Eareckson Tada, who became paralyzed at 17 and has spent decades advocating for people with disabilities while maintaining her faith. Or countless ordinary people who've lost children, battled diseases, faced injustice, and somehow found the strength to keep believing, keep loving, keep hoping. If you're struggling with this question right now, I want you to know your questions are valid. Your anger is valid. Your doubt is valid. God is big enough to handle your honest emotions. And you're not a bad Christian for asking why. Some of the most faithful people in history have asked the same question. I also want you to know, you don't have to figure this all out right now. You don't have to have perfect theology to have real faith. Sometimes faith is just choosing to take the next breath, the next step, even when nothing makes sense. And finally, whether you believe in God or not, if you're suffering, reach out, talk to someone, get help. Don't suffer alone. And if you see someone else suffering, show up, be present. Sometimes the answer to where is God in suffering is in the people who show up to help. Thank you for watching this difficult topic with me. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. How do you reconcile suffering with faith? What perspective has helped you or someone you love? Let's have a respectful conversation below. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into tough questions about Christianity. I'll see you in the next video.